Hey KAWP TV watchers, welcome to another episode of our podcast, and today I'm here with Sarah Howard and
Barnett, but was Howard.
Sarah Barnett, because you're recently married.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Sarah played collegiate softball. She was a pitcher and also a hitter.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're going to do today, Sarah, is talk a little bit about, we're all in the midst of this pandemic. We can't go to the gyms. Normally we'd be playing softball or baseball right now. None of that is happening. We don't want to lose our skills.
Right.
Are there some things that you can show us that we can kind of do around home that would, one, keep us fit, number two, allow us to stay pretty sharp with our skills, and number three, something that we can do pretty quickly every day, maybe, to kind of stay with our sport?
Yeah, absolutely, Kelly. Well, one, a lot of us don't have the unfortunately the resources of, like you said, being at the gym. But two, we can do agility, we can do speed, we can work on power, just using our body weight and a couple of things. We just have to be resourceful. And I think also just setting the expectation of, we're not going to make huge strength gains like at our house. We don't have really the amount of weights to really, push the margin on that. But what we can do is have the expectation of continuing our reactive skills, like I said, our agility, and maintaining the strength that we already have, and we're not losing that. So when we get back onto the field, it's a pretty seamless transition back into it.
Well, plus, I mean, you were a collegiate softball player, but I think a lot of athletics is explosion and power and speed. So this is not necessarily specific to softball. I mean, some of the things may be, but I mean, if you're an athlete, if you play soccer, if you play basketball, football, tennis, etc., a lot of these will translate quite well because you still need to be explosive. You still need to be quick with whatever sport that it is that you're playing.
Right.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about you as a pitcher. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been fascinated by pitchers. They're a little bit different than everybody else.
Yeah,
I didn't want to say that, but essentially pitchers, it's a game within a game.
Right.
And we have to have, number one, we have to have a mental aspect to pitching. And number two, we have to have a strategic aspect to pitching. So how are you as far as a pitcher? Some guys or girls are power. All they do is try to throw the ball past you. Some are more tactical. What kind of pitcher were you?
I would say it was a little bit of both.
Okay.
I, coming out of middle school, I was already like 5'8", 100 and whatever pounds. Right. So I was a pretty big kid. And then in high school, I was about 5'10", big hands. So I was just kind of, luckily I had the inherent startup of a pitcher. Correct. And so power kind of came easier to me. But I knew that, even now, I look back from when I played softball, girls now are bigger, they're faster, they're throwing the ball harder. Girls can now, when they're in high school, hit, 68, 70 miles an hour. That was unheard of when I played. So the game's changing.
Is it from training?
Why are they? Honestly, I think it's just a little bit of both. A little bit of both things. Training, and I think just people, honestly, kids are getting bigger in general.
Right.
I think the new knowledge in training and nutrition and those kinds of things.
Were you in a formal program when you played?
I was. So I played in high school, and we had a great program at Scott County. I was a Scott County grad, and we were always really successful, but our conditioning coach was our softball coach, which it was pretty good for what we had. And then I went to Providence College in Rhode Island, and we had a great D1 strength and conditioning coach. And so pretty much in college is when I really, really started hitting the weights hard and kind of changing my mindset of, we can't just think about performance, outcomes, results. We have to think of my body as a whole element. So there's a lot of it that I had to focus on.
What about injury prevention? Was that part of your...
Huge. Like I said, in high school, hindsight's always 20/20 when you're turning 30 and you think about yourself being an athlete in your teens. But not necessarily in high school. I wish it was a little more, but in college, definitely. Making sure that I was doing a dynamic warm-up before any time I picked up a ball.
What is a dynamic warm-up?
Just making sure that I'm increasing my body temperature. Not just starting pitching cold or doing any sort of strength training cold. So making sure my heart rate gets up a little bit. I'm warming up that, the musculature and the fascia and just doing those kinds of things. So being informative of what your body's doing and why it's doing it, I think is really important and as an athlete. So if you can think that way, you're way ahead of a lot of people that are just good at what they do and they're just kind of doing it.
So even though a lot of the listeners and watchers of this aren't college athletes,
right?
But they exercise. They want to be weekend sports participants. So a dynamic warm-up applies to all of us. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And
so that's not just, I'm going to go out and move my arm across and now I'm ready to go.
Anything you do, it has to be intentional.
Okay.
We can't just, like you said, just kind of be flailing about. It has to be specific to our sport. If I'm a pitcher, my shoulders need to be warmed up.
Right.
I use a lot of hips, a lot of legs, so I need to, get the lower body primed and ready to go for a lot of explosive activity for a long time.
Right.
So that's, you got to think about that way.
Sure. Well, if you don't mind, do you have some things that you can show our viewers?
Oh, yeah.
Of some...
Got a big bag of tricks.
Okay, to get us ready for whatever sport it is, and if we happen to be softball, baseball players, help us with that as well.
Of course.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, Sarah, so you want to take a little time and show us some dynamic warm-ups first, correct?
Right. Okay. Yeah, so this can be like 5 minutes. It's not a whole hour thing. Really easy to do. So foam roller, if you don't have one, they're pretty cheap, like $15 you can get at Walmart even. But foam rolling, if you're not sure what it is, we're not just like flailing around on a cylindrical tube for a reason. There's a reason to it. So what this is a self-myofascial release. Okay. And so our muscles are encapsulated by fascia. So I didn't know this in high school. Now I do. I'm telling you now. What we have to do is get our muscles primed and that fascia ready to go to do a lot of explosive activity. So getting ourselves on this foam roller will help kind of relax the muscles, release some tension in that fascia, which is really important. And as a pitcher, I'm a very quad dominant person. Okay. Years and years of just explosiveness forward all the time, 100 pitches, 5 times a week for years. That's a pretty habitual movement that I did a lot. So I really had to focus on my glutes and my hamstrings. And that's kind of something I still do today that's kind of haunted me for a while. So what I'll do here is take it to the floor, and I'll show you from the side view. But really I'm going to target my glutes first. So my favorite one is to really cross over in that figure 4 position and kind of lean into one side and find that tension point. So I'm going to roll about that muscle till I feel kind of that hurts so good feeling. And then I'm going to stick it and just kind of allow my body to sit into that roller. So we don't have to do a lot of rolling back and forth. Just find those points and allow yourself just to kind of settle in and hold that for about 30 to 45 seconds on each side. And then, like I said, we'll switch. Then I like to transition down into my hamstrings. And if you can tell, I'm using my hands and my feet as levers. So obviously the amount of body weight that you put into the foam roller, the more tension that it's going to create. So just rolling, again, around on that hamstring until I find the tension point on that one leg. And then I'm just going to kind of go back and forth nice and easy on that tension point, which I found pretty quick. And so what this is doing, like I said, is just getting those muscles and that fascia primed for a lot of explosive and powerful activity. And then finally, like I said, my whole posterior chain is pretty tight. So I'm going to go into my calf. I'm going to use my hands as levers, find that tension point in my calves, and then again, just going back and forth. So pretty easy to do. Just take like 45 seconds on each side to kind of target that area. And then also, I again do a lot of forward movement pitching. So I want to stretch out my chest and get that ready to go, and then work on my back, loosening up my back. So I'm going to take that foam roller into a vertical position, just right along my spine, open up, and then just settle in and really relax my body into that foam roller for about 1 minute. And just relax as much as possible.
And is your head supported on this?
My head is supported on that, yes.
And Sarah, people that are going to do this dynamic warm-up. Tell them about discomfort and pain.
Right. So I try to say, like, we never want to have an athlete in pain. So the discomfort, I call it just barely kissing the pain. It's just kind of like a hurt so good feeling.
Okay.
If you were saying, ow, I can't stand this for 45 seconds, we need to alleviate some of the pressure that you're putting into the football.
And that just take a little of the weight off.
Yeah, just take
of
a little bit of your weight off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You want me to continue?
Yes, please.
So something else that I always did before I did pitching, weight training, really anything that I knew was going to require a lot of leg work, is using a band. So there's a lot of different types of bands, but this guy is a circular band, and I'm going to put this right above my knees. And what I'm going to use this for is to activate my glutes. Pitching, like I said, is a lot of hip work. As far as the softball pitcher, it's a lot different than baseball, but as far as a female pitcher, we use a ton of core, a ton of hips and glutes, quadriceps. Just here down is our powerhouse.
That's your driver.
Right, yeah, that's our big driver. That's where we're getting our speed and power. And like I said, I'm very quad dominant from just driving forward years and years. So these glutes, they need to be activated before I'm starting pitching so they can be used properly. So I like to do just some abduction, so abduction with my leg. Keep in tension with that band. I'm just going to press out, come back in. So I'm going to do 20 reps. And as this guy's working, I can feel my glute instantly firing.
Okay.
And firing just kind of means like that burning sensation, or just like, yeah, I feel that muscle working. So I'm getting that mind to muscle connection, primed and ready to go for my movement. So like 20 reps from the left, 20 to the right, or we can go wide and just do a little tick-tock variation back and forth. Also too, I like to do monster walks. So just kind of, again, keeping tension in that band, getting into an athletic position or defensive position, and just going wide, walking out, and then walking back. I'm just doing about 10 reps.
And you want to do posterior exercises,
right,
because you feel that muscular imbalance can lead to injury? Is
Huge.
That why we do that?
Yeah, so again, hindsight's 2020. I became more astute in college with this, but if you can know now in high school or younger, you're already ahead of it. But making sure that we strengthen our entire body so we don't have the weakness in our kinetic chain.
Right.
Successful more on the field, and like you said, injury prevention, which leads to longer time on the field and producing more.
Well, I think that you have had the benefit of a lot of good trainers. Your coaches have also been good. But those of you who don't have access maybe to coaches or trainers, just understand that what we're talking about here is it's easy to become muscularly dominant in a sport. If you're a tennis player, you're always doing the same kind of forehand motion, and it's easy to get kind of used to doing that motion, and you let the other side of your body kind of go, and that leads to injury.
Right.
So by you training the posterior part of your body, what you're trying to do is enhance your sports performance, but also lessen the chances of injury just because of one muscle overtaking the other.
Right, and sport-specific exercises are obviously important, but like you said, you're doing them habitually over and over and over again. So it's important to target those weaker areas.
Okay, what else?
Also too, if you don't have a band, which again, those are pretty cheap to have and they don't have a lot of room, so you can keep them everywhere at home, but a way we can do this as well, I love this exercise, I do it with my clients a ton, and myself, is an isometric wall lean. So you're gonna get really close to this wall, and take the leg closest to the wall at a 90 degree. And what you're gonna do, standing nice and tall, you're gonna squeeze your leg, really pressing against that wall for 1/1000, and release. Squeeze and release. And what I'm feeling during this is that abduction in my glute, and then this stabilizing glute. So my glute here is firing as well to stabilize my pelvis. So this is a great exercise. All you need is a wall.
Yeah,
really easy to do.
Yeah, and the great thing is the other people that we've talked to today have all utilized the wall. So this is just another prop for the wall that we're incorporating.
Right.
Great.
So I targeted my glutes, targeted my posterior chain. I don't have to do this here, but typically I would do just like 5 minutes of like a high knee, just kind of getting my internal temperature warmed up, increasing my heart rate, some butt kicks, getting those quads warmed up. And then I'm gonna go to my upper body, which is pretty simple stuff. Just making sure that the whole shoulder complex is warmed up and ready to go, because I'm going to be throwing 100 pitches during a practice. And I know that sounds crazy for a baseball pitcher, but softball pitching is a little different. We can go a little bit longer. So we just kind of make sure that those small muscles in our shoulders are strong. So something that I like to do, it's called a blackbird, and just making sure that I'm really working on the mobility of my shoulders. So here, I'll go diagonally so you can see. Coming down on the floor, I'm going to put my hands, palms facing up. I'm going to raise my chest up, squeeze my shoulder blades together or retract them, come back down. Okay, so just working on shoulder retraction, really getting those posterior delts. And then another one I like to do is squeeze, rotate out, come back in, reset.
And I assume if a person has a shoulder, like a rotator cuff issue, this will point it out.
Yes.
Because you'll have something that will look like one shoulder isn't, one elbow isn't coming up as far.
Right, 100%.
So this will expose that if you're having an issue.
Right, and a lot of times, like I said, pitching as well as a lot of sports are very forward movement oriented. So a lot of times we, even without knowing, if you're a runner, if you're a pitcher, we get kind of in that protracted stance, we get a little forward. And so just making sure that we get our back strong and the shoulders strong is super important. So I would kind of go through that sequence, just do a little arm circle, just get my arm rolling, and then I'm ready to go. Yeah.
What are some exercises that you like to do as far as performance enhancers?
Right, so if you're at home, just some strength exercises that I think are really easy to do without minimal equipment. Again, I'm priming my glutes. So one, if you can get creative, if you have like cans of paint, a bag of birdseed, a bag of dog food, throw some textbooks in a duffel bag, you have weights at home.
Sure.
They don't have to be dumbbells, they don't have to be plates. So be creative. But I love single leg exercises because we need those big squat movements, deadlift movements where we're in a fixed position just to get that strength. But also too, we rarely do anything on both legs in a fixed position in a sport. So just making sure that we're doing those lunges, forward lunges, working those different planes of motion where we're hitting lateral lunges. Those are super important. Also too, single leg squats, I think. Just getting on single legs, I think is really important.
Do you do those 10 reps on the forward lunge and then 10 reps to the lateral lunge?
Right.
Or do you mix them up? How do you
honestly,
like to do
if you're at home, don't make it complicated. Just do like 3 sets of 10. Like I said, a lot of things is forward dominated. We do a lot of things in the sagittal plane, that forward plane. So if we can work transversely or on the frontal plane, so hitting that lateral lunge where we're really sitting into that hip, driving back, just do 10 on each side. And then do a little clock movement. So you can hit lateral, 45, into a forward, just really functional movements, and it's easy. All you need is yourself.
Right.
Also too, again, I'm really focusing on my glutes and hamstrings. Super powerful for me. So I'm gonna come down. Bridges are one of my favorite exercises for anyone. Coming down, heels close to the butt. Again, if you have a weight, you can just put that right on your hips. Really pressing through, squeezing those glutes. I can feel them activating as soon as I come up into that hip extension and come down. We can also do a single leg, like my single leg exercises that I love so much. Pressing through, I'll feel that in my hamstring a little bit. And then single leg exercises are really good because you can assess if one leg is stronger than the other, or if we feel stronger in one side of our kinetic chain than the other. That's important to know.
I think it's important to note she's really focusing on what she perceives as a weakness of her. She's talking about how everything is quad dominated, how everything in her sport moves her forward. So you get training just from doing your sport. So your muscles are getting your training. So what you're actually training now is those weaker muscles, the ones that don't get incorporated as much in the sport. Is that correct?
Correct. Okay. And like I said, having the expectation of at home, you're probably going to be working on maintenance. And making sure that we are preventing injury. And so these are great exercises to maintain the strength that you have. and relative strength as well.
So if you're a person that's a soccer player, a football player, basketball player, tennis player, think about what your motion is and what you do a lot of in your sport. Okay, so if you think about that, those muscles are probably getting a little bit of training through your sport. So think about the muscles that are the antagonist to those muscles.
Right.
And if you're a tennis player, spend some time on the left side, opening up the left side of your body, working on the left side of your body so that it matches up the right side of your body. There's a tennis player, his name is Rafael Nadal, and when he was first coming up as a 19-year-old, he was one of the first tennis players that actually had a physique. I mean, John McEnroe, Ivan Lendl, Stefan Edberg, those guys were kind of tall and skinny and lanky. They didn't have much of a physique. But then Nadal comes along and he had a physique. And the thing that I noticed about him was he's a left-handed player, that his left arm always looked a little bit bigger than his right arm. Well, that's because he hit thousands and thousands of forehand shots with his left hand and probably didn't hit a whole lot with his right. So if I were his trainer, I would be saying, Rafa, when we're finished, hit a bunch of forehands with your right hand just so you can work on that weakness in your body. But he went, what do I know? He's won 18 majors, and I've won 0. So.
Right, and also something too, I was a hitter, like you said, really focusing on that transverse plane, the rotational pattern, and being able to rotate, use our mobility in our thoracic spine, really use our core. That's important as well. I don't have a ball over here, but we have one over there. You want me to get that one?
I'll get it.
Just a 10-pound ball or whatever. I really like warming up and working on strength-specific exercises using rotational patterns. So you can do it with a ball. If you don't have a medicine ball, a lot of people have TheraBands or resistance tubes. We can do that as well, just putting them up on a high anchor and working down. But I love wood chops. This is one of my favorite powerful exercises as well. But again, you can go to a wall or you can go in a fixed position, but just kind of loading and creating that explosion through my hips and core. So starting low into that pocket, tossing into that wall and resetting. So I'm really driving, I'm loading into that leg like I'm about to swing a bat. So loading into that leg, creating that power and force, and exploding up into the walls. So I'm using my core, I'm using that glute, and it's a little more dynamic. And
you will even hear a little bit of a grunt as you
probably.
releasing
definitely.
The ball there. Is this also a partner exercise you can do with a
partner?
Absolutely. So if you've got siblings, they can work on this together, or your mom.
We can toss it back and forth and just kind of go through a little bit of a pattern. So wood chops coming up, wood chops coming down, where we're powering through, controlling the way up. Those are all things that we can really work on to work on that rotational pattern, because hitting involves rotation as well as pretty much every other exercise that you do.
So not only is that a performance enhancer, but it's also, again, injury prevention.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So just the 3 things that I would focus on at home: single leg exercises.
Okay.
So like your lunges.
And you're getting balance with this too.
Right. You're getting balance, core.
Okay.
And then also working the dexterity of your ankles and feet with that balance. So if you even want to do these without shoes, you can work on that as well, just as far as ankle mobility, where you're on one leg, that ankle really has to work. So that's important as well. But single leg exercises, working posterior strength, so like those bridges that I showed you, and then working rotational patterns. So implementing that whether with a ball, you can even use a basketball or something, it's a little less heavy, or a resistance tube. You can anchor it up, come down, control up. That'll work with pretty much every sport.
Right, and like you said, a gallon of milk, or some water.
Get crafty,
People are used to going to practice every day, and they're used to practicing for a couple hours every day. What about your exercises that you showed us? Is this an everyday, something we should do every day, or is it every other day? What do you think?
I think these are every day. It's, typically when we're doing really heavy weights, or we're doing strength training, we need that 48 hours of recovery. These are just movement patterns that are working relative strength. So they're not incredibly taxing where we're doing like a 1 rep max on a squat. So just take 20 minutes. start with a 5-minute dynamic warm-up. Go through 15 minutes of just getting it done. Now I'm not talking like doing an exercise and texting with your friends. Just making sure that you're being efficient, you're being intentional, and you can do it quick.
Sarah, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you spending time with us today. And you're a trainer here at Fitness Plus. If any of you young people out there are interested in working with Sarah to improve your sports performance, just check into our description underneath the video today, and we'll leave all of Sarah's contact info so that you can get in touch with her.
Sounds great. Thanks, Kelly.
All right, thank you, Sarah.
Appreciate it.